Welcome to the Sisterhood Effect, where friendship, empowerment, and connection come to life. I'm Danica.
And I'm Cynthia, and we're two friends on a mission to inspire women everywhere to find their way, embrace their power, and build meaningful circles of support.
This podcast is about celebrating the strength of women individually and together. We believe in the magic that happens when women come together, share their stories, and lift each other up.
Whether you're seeking clarity, confidence, or a community, you found a space where you can feel like you're not going through this journey alone.
So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and join us as we explore the beauty of female friendship, the power of vulnerability, and the journey to becoming your most authentic self.
This is the Sisterhood Effect, where women rise together.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Sisterhood Effect podcast. Uh, this feels like so much play. This feels so much like play doing this podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation that we had last time. And, Cynthia and I were talking about how we want to keep this conversational aspect to the podcast. Um, so please, if you want to initiate conversations as well, as a listener of this podcast, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Last episode we shared about really the differences between sisterhood and friendships and went into the pillars of sisterhood being support, safety, mutual growth, generosity of assumption, willingness to sit together in discomfort, and a lot more. And today we want to talk about the energetics of clean sisterhood. Um, like, what does it look like to become a clean friend energetically? What does that feel like? Because I know for me, I've experienced friendships who I thought were like true soul sister friendships, but we were engaged in something pretty messy. Um, so, how do we find out if we're partaking in a messy dynamic? And if we are, how do we move forward? So we just want to open up this conversation. And before we do, I want to start off with a little quote from this book, The Gift, by Edith Edger or Egger. And she says, one of our first fears is abandonment. Thus, we learn early how to get the A's: attention, affection, approval. We figure out what to do and who to become to get our needs met. The problem is not that we do these things, it's that we keep doing them. We think we must in order to be loved. We think we must get the attention, affection, and approval and get those needs met in order to be loved. Mm.
I think it's true. Like, we think we must get those things to be loved, but sometimes growing up, it's like we do need to do those things to get love from people, um, which is not always, it's not the best, but it's something that we're conditioned with.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at that first fear being of abandonment, right? Like you grow up and our initial bond is with our mother, typically. If we have a mother that's there to support us and is capable of giving us the care and the attention that and the co-regulation that we deserve.
Hmm.
So getting that affection, that attention, that approval is just such a natural thing for children to crave, right?
Hmm.
And if like we get those needs met by our caregivers through our early years. And like the quote said, it's not bad that we're trying to get those things
Hmm.
and get those needs met. What the problem is that this continues on during adulthood, where then we
Hmm.
start resourcing outwards into our friendships, into our relationships in order to to fill those gaps in our life. So the attention, the approval, and the affection is
Hmm.
just this like constantly seeking outwards in order to meet those needs, right? Instead of resourcing inwards
Mm.
and giving yourself the attention, giving yourself that approval, giving yourself that affection. And then that manifests in relationships and friendships, oftentimes unconsciously, right?
I know you were saying like you for this it has manifested for you through friendships and you've
Mm-hmm.
seen that. And for me, I think it's manifested more in relationships. And so, I went through a difficult period the past few years, and that was really hard to go through. Um, with like residency and then my parents and my dad died and um my mom has dementia and all that happened within the last like 3 years. And so um I really leaned on my partner, and my dad died. That was like the biggest thing, trigger, I would say, which happened 3 years ago. And a few months later, that's when I met my partner. And so I was just really in a dark place. And so when I met him, he offered so much. Like he gave me so much and knew that I was going through this hard period. So like supported me through it so much that I became to depend on him 100% for everything. And he always put me first, always like put my needs before his own needs. And I got so used to that. And so then in our whole relationship, like I was fully dependent on him, because I was just dealing with so much. And so that's why at the beginning of this year, I realized that I was like, I almost felt like I couldn't live without him. So, and that like if something were to happen, like I just wouldn't even survive on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, no, like, even though he is so generous, it's not fair to him for me to put all this on him and always like need him for everything. And so I really made an attempt to build up my own community, do like figure out my own hobbies and like have a life outside of just him
Mm-hmm.
being everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's kind of how it's manifested in my life, where I just am searching outward, or was kind of relying on something that was outside of me to give me happiness, to give me support, to give me, and not realizing that I could also provide that for myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think was a bad thing. Like I did go through a lot, so um, it's really hard in a time like that to find the inner strength. But I think through that, having that support, I have slowly been able to develop my own strength, develop my own support for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I see from what you're saying, it's like there was definitely a level of codependency there and
Hmm.
of like just putting all of your eggs into his basket
Hmm.
and like expecting him to really support you in that, and he was willingly also doing that dance with you. And that's such a great point to talk about because like oftentimes these dynamics that are happening within friendships or relationship, it's a dance that you play together. It's not just you that is being the needy one and that is relying on him. It's also him not putting his boundaries up and deciding that that is okay to like completely leave everything and be there for you. And I had a friend that was like always like I felt like she was always breaking down and I was there like literally I like I'd receive like a huge paragraph in the morning at 7 a.m. and I was like, oh my gosh, she needs me. And so I would be like, right, my boyfriend wouldn't even hear from me and it's like 3 hours later and this would happen. It wasn't just like, and I'm not saying that that's not okay once in a while because like
Hmm.
sometimes your friend needs you and
Yeah.
you're there for her or him, if it's a boyfriend or whatnot. But like for that to happen consistently, there is a pattern there that's happening because what I started noticing when I was able to zoom out and eventually when I was out of it is the energy was chaotic there. And I craved like a drug her
Mm-hmm.
to need me because
Mm-hmm.
when she needed me, then I felt like I had
Mm-hmm.
purpose. I felt powerful in some ways because I was coming to her rescue. And so we were playing these roles of the damsel in distress and the hero. So I got to play the hero in that friendship. And she got to be the damsel in distress. And so the more that she needed me, the more that I was there, the more that we fed into it together. Right. And
Yeah.
so, what was interesting about that friendship in particular is that there were moments where she didn't need me, where she was
Mm.
fine. And those were moments that I was like, are we even friends? And so that's what I'm inviting us to look into. It's the energy of like, hmm, is this like a messy friendship? Is this based on dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
codependency?
Yeah.
Is this like, are you changing yourself in order to people please? Are you walking on eggshells? That's where you start
Yeah.
noticing the different energy. And when I tap into that friendship, it's like it was very consuming and chaotic, where I can tap into other friendships that feel so soothing to my
Mm-hmm.
nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Energetically, it's different.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've told me this story before about, your friendship, and hearing it again, it's like, it's just, it's so similar. Like we were both in a dynamic that was very similar, but we were both playing the different parts. Like I was definitely the damsel in distress, and
Mhm.
he was definitely the hero. And just hearing you say that story, it just makes me reflect so much on like, wow, that's like that's probably how he felt. He probably felt like, wow, this is great. Like I get to be a hero. I get to save her. And it
Mhm.
probably felt really good for him.
Yeah.
And so like moving into that's great, like you said, sometimes, but it's not long lasting
It's
and
not
it's
sustainable.
not
Yeah.
sustainable.
No.
And so I will like give him credit too. Like he was also getting burnt out by always putting me first, always putting my needs first. So he started to kind of like advocate for that and like
Mhm.
advocate, but I was very resistant and I was like, "Oh my God, like that means you don't love me anymore." Like, because like you did all this stuff for me before and like now you're not like now you're like putting up some boundaries and I'm like, well, that means you don't love me anymore because you did all this stuff before.
Mm.
Why can't you do it now?
Can
And
I pause
so,
you right
yeah,
there? Because
yeah,
I love what you're saying. And what I'm hearing is he decided he no longer wanted to play in that dynamic. And in order to do that, he needed to be really strong and rooted
yeah.
in no longer wanting to play into that.
Mhm.
And that created discomfort for you
Mhm.
because it wasn't what you were used to. And
Mhm.
this is a beautiful segue, I think, into
Yeah.
moving into like, how do we address that and how do we
Mhm.
move through that? Because it does require us to be comfortable with holding discomfort,
Mhm.
right? And be comfortable with holding someone and allowing them to be in discomfort, especially when you're used to fixing their problems, when you're
Mhm.
used to
Yeah.
being that hero and savior,
Yeah.
right? Because like now the hero, whoever was the hero, needs to put energy into themselves because a lot of the
Mhm.
times, at least in my experience, the reason why I was so obsessed with like going and saving this person was because I had a big lack of trust and belief in myself and self-worthiness, like
Mhm.
a lack of self-worth.
Mhm.
And I needed to build upon that and start like developing what I wanted to do and what could bring me more purpose in my life instead of resourcing my purpose out of
Mhm.
saving this person, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like needing, and it only takes one person to shift the dynamic
Yeah.
because as soon as you put your 2 feet down and you
Mhm.
decide, hey, I'm going to hold my own discomfort
Mhm.
and start to fix things, you're immediately changing the energy. You're changing the energy of of the thing. And then you got to be okay with the other person like being like, what the fuck? You know, this isn't how our
Yeah.
dynamic usually goes.
Yeah.
And it might feel sticky for a little while. It might feel difficult to hold that and be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And allow the other person to kind of deal with their stuff. But it's like
Yeah.
you are becoming a higher version of yourself, and you're also doing it from a place of like, you're doing it from a place of like, I love me and I also
Mm-hmm.
love you so much, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to allow you to move through this as well, and find that strength to be able to save yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. And I also want to add, if you're in a dynamic, because you said like, you know, you were the damsel in your dynamic
Mm-hmm.
and I was the hero in my dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, this can be very sneaky, but if you are playing one of the roles, you're also wanting to play the other role in some other dynamic. So that
Mm-hmm.
might be something to also look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to
Oh
add that
yeah,
in
I
there.
definitely think that's true.
Mm.
Yeah, and just one thing too, I don't think that it was he was thinking that he didn't want to play in this dynamic anymore. I think he got to a point where he couldn't. Like
Mm.
he was just pouring so much into me 24/7 that he had nothing left. And so I'm super happy now that, he did that and takes a lot of strength to do that. But obviously at the time, I did not understand all these dynamics. And so I'm glad we're talking about this because,
Mhm.
perhaps someone else is going through something similar. And how do we move through this
Mhm.
gracefully? And,
Yes.
more gracefully than I probably moved through it. Um,
Yes.
so yeah,
Let's get into that. Step
yeah,
one, I want to say, is if
yeah.
you are recognizing this,
Mhm,
you're already at step one, which is that awareness piece.
mhm,
Recognizing that there is a dynamic. And also, I want to say, alongside this step one is also, please do not get into that shame spiral because it will eat you up alive, right? We all know this shame spiral of shit, I've been doing something horrible or whatever it is. And that
mm,
can, yeah,
mm,
that just doesn't serve you at all to get stuck there. Be grateful that you have awareness around it and recognize that you do have power there. And so, number two, I would say self responsibility. Recognize your responsibility of being able to own the part of this dynamic that you've
mm,
played in. Um, Own the role that you've played in that dynamic and how it's met your needs, how it's met
mm,
your sense of your need of approval, of affection, of
mm,
self-worthiness, whatever that is. And recognize, then you can recognize your ability to respond and how you set your ground, how you hold your own discomfort, how you allow that person to also be in some sort of discomfort now that you are disconnecting from that dynamic. And if this is someone that you are wanting to continue a friendship with, this can be a great like a great place to now have a conversation and let them know what you've become aware of, and
mm,
see if they want to work with you in moving through that, right? Because
mhm,
maybe they also are seeing that, or if they're not seeing it, they're definitely feeling it
mm,
energetically. And they might be at the place where they also want to work through that. So what a beautiful opportunity it is that you're offering them to, okay, let's actually try to work through this together and
mhm,
see if we can get to the other side. um and then that last step would be to shift focus onto yourself, onto meeting your own needs.
mhm,
Like you are starting to recognize what need it is that you're filling from engaging in that dynamic. So now, how do I meet that need and love myself unconditionally
mhm,
and like give myself this no nonsense sense type of care?
mhm,
Right. So yeah, shift your focus and place energy into those relationships and friendships that do feel grounding. It's like you had said at the start, right? Like you started resourcing from different relationships, and
mhm,
all friendships can meet certain and I don't like saying meet needs. Like, I don't want us to resource our needs from people. I think that
Mm,
we should have our basic needs covered
mm-hmm,
individually ourselves. And
mm-hmm,
that's how we are powerful because we are no longer resourcing it from other people. But I do also see like how connection is so valuable and can help us
mm,
meet some
mm-hmm,
desires of like wanting that connection and desires for support in certain instances or whatever that is. um
mm-hmm.
Desire for having a cheerleader, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
those are all valid desires, but there's a big difference between desires and needs. And so now you've shifted your focus onto yourself and the friendships that feel energetically
yeah,
different. You're holding your ground.
mm-hmm,
um I think that, if you're doing all of that, then you're on the right path to be able to
yeah,
really decondition your kind of sticky
yeah.
dynamics.
And just how, almost like a blueprint, how I did it, um, which maybe it could help someone else. I kind of got back into therapy more
Mm,
like regularly because I was like, that's one thing I was like, well, I need to take ownership of my own problems and my own the way I handle things. So when my dad passed away, I did do therapy like throughout that time. And then it kind of like fell off and that but when I recommitted to like I need to fix my own problems, I need to be my own hero.
mm.
That was part of it.
Be my own hero,
Um,
yes.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also, put myself out there. I joined the women's circle and I went on a retreat. And it was crazy because it was the first retreat I went to in the springtime and it was at Rehoboth with the Baltimore Women's Circle. And I just like saw it on Instagram and I had known Rachel from undergrad. We both were yoga teachers there. But other than her, I didn't know anyone else. And I just like, and I was like scared. I was like, oh my God, like, what if like this is a dangerous situation and I'm just like going to Rehoboth and like something bad could happen. But I was just like, you know what? Like, let me just do it. Like, and so I put myself out there and I found this sisterhood um, of women that also wanted the same thing. And now we meet like the women from that group, we meet every single month and we continue the sisterhood and we continue this commitment we have to each other and build upon what we built there. And then also, I found different things that I was interested in, like my hobby of ceramics. Like, I love throwing on the wheel now, and that brings me a lot of relaxation and peace, and then also allows me to share my creativity in the world and build something from nothing really like dirt and turn it into something beautiful and functional at the same time. And so it's like I have all of these things that bring me happiness now, my pottery,
Mm,
my sisterhood, talking through my issues or problems with my therapist, like
mm.
um
Yeah, what
they
I'm
all
hearing
help.
is you have like this very solid place of support. Like it's not
Mhm.
just one person that is
Mhm.
helping you, but there are different people, different
Mhm.
communities,
Mhm.
like hobbies, right?
Yeah.
It's not just one thing. And all of these things together kind of create this web where you are so fully like supported and
Yeah.
fulfilled in
Yeah.
so many different ways. So I love that for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
so,
been
yes.
like a lot of work. It wasn't easy.
Mhm.
Like taking the courage and doing all those things, it probably would have been easier just to not do those things and just
Mhm.
depend on this person 100%. But, that's never gonna, like you said, be sustainable.
And I love to say, y'all, it is not easy,
Mm,
but most oftentimes it's
mm-hmm,
simple.
mm-hmm.
Like
That's actually
it,
that's so good.
right? Right? It's like it is not easy, but most oftentimes it is simple. Like what you need to do, the shifts that you need to make is pretty simple.
Mm,
And so it's like find yourself a hobby, find yourself a community,
mm-hmm,
like start like reaching out to people, right? That is simple. Does that mean it's easy? No, but like you can still do it.
mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then like enjoy the fruits of that labor like you seem to be
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I also have, my things.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I want to switch into the homework and what we can give you as little pieces to implement or to maybe reflect on. And I want to
Mm-hmm.
invite you to take inventory of the energy of your friendships,
Mm.
like start noticing when you're hanging out with certain people, like what's the energy that I'm feeling in my body? Does
Yeah.
this feel light? Does this feel grounding? Does this feel chaotic? Right? Like those high type of energy can signify that there is something under the surface that kind of needs to be investigated a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more. If it
Mm-hmm.
feels very grounding, if it feels very smooth, then also take note of that. Why does it feel that way? Um, and then you can ask yourself, am I playing roles in my friendships? Am I playing roles? Am I being the damsel in distress? Am I being the hero in somebody else's story?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and learn to become the best unconditional, no nonsense caregiver to yourself. That's the best thing that you can do. It's
Mm-hmm.
finding that support. I love how you said therapy as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had that friend at one point because I was also resourcing from her. She was a mentor of mine. Like it was very messy on a lot of
Mm-hmm.
levels. And I remember her asking me, like, who do you have for support? And I was like, well, you. And she's like, no, like, don't be doing that. Like get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, get yourself a therapist, something. I can't be
Mm-hmm.
everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was putting on her shoulders as well at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So and I didn't get that when I heard that. I was like, why? What? But like the importance of having a professional support there in your life as well
Mm-hmm.
can really help to untangle those things too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
All right. If
Yeah.
you enjoyed listening to this podcast and you want to support us, rate this episode, rate our podcast, share your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
review, send us a message on
Yeah.
Instagram. We love hearing how this made your wheels turn, and we love to start and continue conversations. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for playing with us, and we'll see you next time.